All right, awesome. So we have Katie Roman. She's newly an EOS Asia team member, and I'll let her kind of introduce herself as well, and then get straight into the presentation. And really appreciate you coming out here today.
Well, thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. I appreciate you having me. I'm just going to do an informal talk. First, a little bit about myself. My name's Leah Peterson, but most people in the community know me as Katie Roman. It was a pen name that I used for EOS Go that stuck. I'm a 30-year-old mom of one, and I live in Oregon, USA. I got involved in the EOS community a little over a year ago, and I'm now employed by EOS Asia as their community champion. I would like to say, though, even though I'm employed by EOS Asia, the following ramblings are my thoughts and opinions alone, and they do not represent EOS Asia in any way. I signed up for this conference to speak at this conference before I joined their team. So originally I was going to speak about forks in the community, but since I'd already done that on the Exploring EOS podcast, I decided that I would change my topic. Something a little more pressing came up, as often does when you're doing community work, and that more pressing topic in my mind is the formation of the EOS Alliance. This was particularly interesting to me because I am extremely interested in little stuff there. I'm extremely interested in how communities evolve and how they take root and form and grow. Great book recommendation for this I would recommend to all of you to read is Reinventing Organizations. You can Google that, look it up. It talks about the evolution of companies, communities, and the next evolution we are going towards currently today. And I believe the EOS community is a part of that. So in my opinion, the formation of this alliance is the first step of a necessary evolution towards true functionality in the EOS mainnet ecosystem. Now, here's my disclaimer. Hopes, dreams, and wild speculations from Katie Roman. I am not formally associated with the Alliance in any way, and all information presented here is merely commentary, ideas, and again, wild speculation. All right, so let's get into it. So the first week of August, I got wind of an interesting idea that was presented at the Unconference on EOS Family Day. Brock Pierce took the stage to discuss the idea of creating an EOS Foundation. He said the foundation would have no authority, that it would serve as a forum where various stakeholders in EOS, big and small, could come together to discuss a variety of ideas, propose solutions, and perhaps most importantly, help bridge the gap in communication that plagues the EOS community each and every day. Brock spoke eloquently about how this foundation could possibly be formed, who it could be comprised of, and why it would be important for the community at large. This was intriguing to me because I was relatively new to the idea of a foundation that could support a decentralized community. Although after I looked into it, it seems that these are quite common in decentralized communities, but it was still a learning experience for me, and it was an intriguing thought for me. I'm new to everything. I've only been in the deep post space about a year. So I decided to do some research so I could discuss this concept and kind of figure out what we've been seeing in crypto land to date so that we could together speculate on what this alliance could be. What the alliance is or should be, of course, in my opinion. Per the limited amount of information we have, the alliance will be a privately funded organization, perhaps partially funded by Brock, perhaps partially funded by other private donations, that aims to improve communication between Block 1, exchanges, token holders, and other interested parties in the EOS ecosystem. This organization claims that it will have no formal power. The only power it will have will pertain to its effectiveness at its mission, which is, again, communication and bridge building. They will have a board of 7 members that will appoint an executive director, and that executive director will appoint a staff to handle the day-to-day activities of the organization. Different ideas have been thrown out there by the community, and the ideas reflect their hopes, dreams, fears about the alliance, right? So far we've had questions like, will they provide funding to the to replace the WPS now that that's at a standstill? Don't know. Will they help fund a referendum tool? Perhaps. Will they act as a soft power that uses their influence for evil? I've seen a lot of this. It's a good question. We, again, do not know. Will they take over the community GitHub? Many people feared that. One person that seemed in favor of that was Dan Larimer himself in the chat. So who knows? Will they do that? We don't know. Are they part of a secret plot to overthrow Dan's yet instituted version 2 of the Constitution? We don't know. These are great questions, though, because we have seen in the community heated debate between Dan and Ian and Thomas about which version of the Constitution would be most sustainable for the community. And as we know, Ian and Thomas are going to be involved in at least the flagship attempt at the EOS Alliance. So it'll be very interesting. These are all legitimate questions, and they reflect the complexities of the EOS community and the challenges that such a diverse community faces. But above all, the fervor, excitement, and anxiety surrounding the Alliance show one thing, that the organization is desperately needed, and organizations like it. For the record, I did reach out to Dan Larimer to ask for his thoughts on the EOS Alliance, and he gave me a very direct and curt response that he is neutral to the formation of the Alliance. So that's his official stance as of a day ago. So let's look at the current challenge. The EOS mainnet is only 2 months old, but the EOS community has been hard at work for over a year. In that time, the coin has built up impressive support and has band together as a community to help each other technically, financially, and also emotionally. Launch was supposed to be a fulfillment of the EOS promise, a governed blockchain in a space that's traditionally shunned governance. Soon after launch, it was apparent that some of those hopes, dreams, and desires had been lost in translation, both figuratively and literally. The community found itself around 2 central hubs, Telegram and WeChat. The Western world using Telegram, the Eastern world using WeChat, with some overlap. But these communication channels have many flaws or were being used by the communities in less than optimal ways. Soon after launch, these hubs became a breeding group for misinformation, scams, untested and unvetted dApps, and we saw a little bit of post-launch chaos there. We also saw the fallout. ECAF, a legitimate group that had been discussed extensively in the EOS Gov channel for over 8 months, was shown to be relatively unknown, misunderstood, and of course, untested. When ECAF moved to protect funds of those that had been scammed, they faced intense scrutiny, with some community members asking, who are they? Why do they have power? They're too centralized. How do we stop potential abuse in the future? Did we ever approve the formation of ECAF? All those questions had been answered extensively before launch, but because the form they were answered in was not highly accessible or known to the community at large, it was an ineffective way to discuss its formation and create it. Arbitration had been a part of the plan of the chain since its inception, but official communication to the community had been lacking. I mean, that's apparent in hindsight, right? Block One's website was and is still bare bones. We do not even know for sure who works at Block One. That's kind of a crazy thought. We know some key players like Sandwich and Dan and Brandon, but who else works there, right? We don't know. The EOS.io site is more helpful, but it's very narrow in the information it presents, and it's inconsistent when it comes to posting updates and information. It hasn't been maintained very well, in my opinion. Block producers do their best, but they are spread out in different channels and have different audiences, their own political agendas, and cannot even verify information with 100% accuracy at times. We're in a decentralized world, people. That's not a bug, it's a feature, but that doesn't mean we don't try to come up with solutions. This is where the Alliance, if executed correctly, could lend a helping hand. Currently, we are in a state of paralysis. To quote my friend Maria Cho at EOS Cafe, decentralization does not mean there are no leaders. In fact, it could mean we need many leaders. I completely agree with this. Decentralization of the nodes was the original concept, right? Geographic diversity, decentralized nodes, independent actors, so that no one person could bring the network down. Now, these thoughts have evolved into DACs and DAOs and the idea to decentralize anything, but we can't lose sight of that original intent, right? So from that original intent, we must build. I believe the Alliance could be a leader in the EOS space, but perhaps in not the original way we're used to defining a leader. They can lead through service, an idea in the past 10 years that's really taken hold. Strong leaders often lead from behind. Strong leaders often allow a lot of support. They don't necessarily even have to present ideas. They just have to support framework on top of building ideas, right? So, and this is an idea that Brock Pierce himself is very into. If what Brock presented is correct, the Alliance could be an important organization that provides the framework, funding, tools, and forums needed for a decentralized community such as EOS to come together and work on the hard stuff. Clearly, Telegram and WeChat, as we currently use them, are great organizations, but have been less than effective when communicating important updates, moving the community from philosophically pondering existential questions into action, which is what we need now, right? If we're going to have serious dApps developing on our network, we need rules in place, we need community consensus, and we need action. So let's look at some real world examples, right? Let's take this from the what could be to what currently is in the world. Obviously, this list cannot be exhaustive, and I'm actually going to speed it up as I've taken up too much time already. But when I started about what the Alliance was trying to do, I started thinking of real world models of forums, boards, structures that exist in the current day. One of my favorite cultural touch points is the Café Gubi Rosé per Wikipedia. I know I butchered that Italians, I'm so sorry. It was a cafe around the 1300s, 1400s in Florence. It was opened, oops, sorry, I messed that up. It was opened in 1896. The cafe was actually named after the red jackets or coats that the waiters wore. In 1910, it changed its name to that officially to reflect the kind of one of the cultural touch points, the red jackets they wore to serve people. And so what happened at that cafe is it got a long-standing reputation as a resort of intellectuals, artists, poets, a place where people could come together, discuss ideas, and then propose ways to implement these ideas in the real world. That's where the futurist movement bloomed. That's where a lot of hard pressing matters got challenged today. The forum allowed people to get together and work out big ideas. The cafe was not only a backdrop to the conversations, it was an integral piece of it. They got there, they drank their coffee, they presented, they argued, they dialogued, but it was a safe space. The cafe provided a safe space with allotted areas, providing scheduling, structure. It helped disperse information. If someone came in at the beginning of the day and someone later, the staff was very receptive to that and communicated any developments that had happened throughout the day. The staff were considered trusted sources of information and could point possible patrons in the right direction, make an introduction, or help host an event. It was more than a venue, it was the heart of the movement. This is something that EOS Mainnet is missing today. And it is a space that the Alliance or any other organization could fill. Another example that I love is code determination in present-day Germany. Per our good friends at Wikipedia, code determination in Germany is a concept that involves the right of workers to participate in the management of the companies they work for. A lot of us know of boards, right? Companies have boards, the boards give advice, the boards advise, the boards can vote out the CAO sometimes. They have a lot of power. So in Germany, they saw these private organizations with a lot of power, and they implemented a rule that depending on the size of your company, you would have to allow your workers, right? So in this case, the community, appoint people to the board, and depending on the size of your company, that kind of defines the rules of how many workers you appoint to the board. Usually, a union forms and they appoint associates, but the great thing about this is that co-determination in Germany means that a board cannot just be filled with friends, high-powered C-suite from other companies, etc., to the board. They'd literally have to put people that have the most at stake on their board, their workers. And it's been a great success for Germany. The people on the board love this configuration. All members say it's great. Some of the best ideas for efficiency and implementation come from their workers that are on the board. What I love about this example, it shows how structure of influence can be structured in a way that not only allows the community to hold it accountable, but allows the community to appoint members directly onto the board, and that there's a space specifically carved out for them to do so. In Brock's presentation, he mentioned that the first members of the Alliance board would be sourced by a group of people, including him, and then starting as soon as only 3 months into its formation, seats would begin coming up for election. It is unclear what parameters each board member would need to meet, and if theoretically the board would be made up of members elected, or if each seat would have to meet certain criteria. But what is clear is that within a year, we would have a fully elected board elected by EOS holders. And then presumably that board would be up for re-election every year after that. Since this is a private organization, it does not need to allow for election as board members, right? It's a nice feature. It's a smart one, as the community could probably best be capable of deciding which members of the board would be most in tune with their needs, and it would allow for more diverse representation. I'm going to go ahead. I'm way over and skip over. I was going to speak about the Bitcoin Foundation. Look it up. Brock is the chairman there. You can see it's had middling success. I think we can do better in EOS. Also, I was going to talk about the Ethereum Foundation. You can look it up. Vitalik's on that board. It only has 3 members. They actually don't even call it a board. And they're mostly concentrated on improving the code structure of Ethereum. All right, to wrap up here. Yes, Happy Money Man, reinventing organizations. To wrap up here, I want to close with what the Alliance isn't or shouldn't be, right? Because we do have to be vigilant. We cannot let centralized soft power take over a decentralized community. It completely defeats what we're trying to do here. So the Alliance has a huge opportunity. A foundation that advocates for EOS token holders has been attempted before, but has not succeeded. The Alliance seems to be a legitimate attempt at providing coordinated communication and the necessary tools that the community needs in order to move forward in an organized and functional way. Just because we're decentralized doesn't mean we can't be competent, right? The names we know as involved in the foundation are as follows. We know some of those names are Thomas Cox, Ian Griggs, Kevin Wilcox, and of course, Brock Pierce. These have been long-standing community advocates, and it will be interesting to see how they transition into this new venture. One does notice that the names presented are Western and not geographically diverse. In fact, they're very US-centric, but I would hope the makeup of the organization itself is more diverse geographically, and as many EOS token holders come from Korea and China. Those quibbles aside, let's look at what the Alliance should not be. The Alliance should not be a media outfit that censors any legitimate news that is brought forth to the forum. Media should be private organizations that prove their value. The Alliance should not position itself as a media outfit. The Alliance should not be a highly geographically Western outfit that has limited input from the Eastern world. For this reason, I would recommend that the Alliance, at the very least, ensure that their output is shared from a website, in WeChat, and in Telegram, if not forgoing Telegram and WeChat altogether, since those two platforms got us into this conundrum in the first place. I hope that the Alliance will consider creating their own on-chain forums for news discovery and structured discussion. The Alliance should not in any way attempt to persuade token holders on any piece of referendum. Rather, it should be the conduit through which referendum could be channeled if token holders so choose to channel their proposals through the Alliance system. The Alliance should not be an opaque organization known to token holders only by its name. It should strive to operate with full transparency of members, funds, roadmaps, and any other logistics. In this way, it can truly position itself as a beacon of trust in a decentralized environment. The Alliance should be filed as a nonprofit and do no major appeals to the community for funds or funding until it is suited with a fully elected board in order to insulate itself from unnecessary critique and premature obligation. This is my advice. I think it would be really bad idea for it to start collecting donations and funds from the community until it has a fully elected board. Of course, the above are just my suggestions. I do feel the Alliance has the chance to make a go of something real here. It would be a shame if they were to move too quickly or to try to assert power too widely right out the gate. The initial promise of it acting as a forum and a facilitator is a modest and appropriate project, and I think that's a great way to start. They should be a forum, a facilitator, and start small there, serving the community. Whatever happens with the Alliance, its formation, is a call to other private groups to form, join together, and create meaningful workflows towards the betterment of the EOS community, because we are, of course, changing the world here. Thank you so much, everyone.